And that's what we're looking to revolutionize within the industry, is making DNA the standard for delivery, and we can deliver whatever therapeutic, especially biologics, into patients and have it be manufactured inside the patient.
BioNeex is the first biopharma R&D open exchange platform for licensing and co-development partnerships of drug candidates. We are working closely with biopharmaceutical companies that are actively seeking preclinical and clinical stage drug candidates for in-licensing and co-development partnerships to expand their R&D pipelines. If you are a development stage biotech company and are looking for licensing and co-development partners for your drug candidates, then list them for free on BioNeex and get contacted directly by these biopharmaceutical companies. We are already working with many partners. Would you like to learn more about BioNeex? Feel free to get in touch with us. We look forward to working with you.
Hello, everyone. Today we are back again with BioNeex interview. Our guest today is CEO and co-founder of PepVax, Mahesh Narayanan. Hello, Mahesh. It's great to having you today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me introduce very briefly the company, and then I'll give you the word to tell more about the company.
Sure.
Thank you. So PepVax is the parent company of the Intus family of companies revolving around its non-viral DNA-based gene delivery and enhancement platform to develop the next generation of cell, gene, and immunotherapies for cancer, infection disease, and genetic disease. So please, Mahesh, tell us about the company a little bit more and what makes this development stage company so unique.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for the opportunity. Pleasure to be here. So PepVax, as you mentioned, we've developed a novel, potent drug delivery and gene enhancement platform. Our goal really is to replace viral vectors with non-viral vectors for better delivery, more efficacy, and better safety profiles. I'm sure you're familiar, a lot of current gene therapies and cell therapies rely on the AAV, adeno-associated viral vectors or lentiviruses. They're really good. Viruses are really good, and as we can see from this pandemic, to penetrate cells, right? But they're also not controllable. Once they can mutate, they can go into cells that we don't want them to go into, and so it's really hard to control them. I guess the biggest problem is how complicated they are to manufacture and how complicated they are to administer into patients. And so our goal and my background has primarily been in DNA-based plasmids. And historically speaking, they haven't been that great at penetrating cells. DNA likes to be inside the nucleus, but once it comes out of the nucleus, it doesn't really like to function properly. But my goal and my team's goal for the past 15 years or so has been to identify certain aspects of DNA that make it work as well as viruses do. And that is what our proprietary platform is. It's the reason we call it SmartMid is not only because it is smart, but there are multiple regions within the plasmid that make it act very similar to viruses. And this enables us to deliver them in a much more efficient way than you would in a virus, because DNA is on its own not toxic to patients. But also it's very easy to manufacture DNA. You don't need a controlled environment like you would with viruses. DNA is very stable in room temperature. It's also very easy to put together because it naturally wants to create the sequences. So it's very easy to manufacture. You can put it in small bacterial plates, and they can make all this DNA for you, or however you want to manufacture them. But that is one aspect of why we want to use DNA instead of viruses for these type of cell and gene therapies. But all of these complications you get in viruses also increase the cost of those drugs, right? If you look at a lot of the cell therapies available, or even gene therapies, they're going at $250,000, maybe $300,000 per dose, right? And this makes it very inaccessible for majority of patients. DNA is not as expensive, and because it's so easy to administer, it really cuts down the cost and the complications you get with viral vectors. And so we can potentially do a lot of these treatments as we scale up about the 10th of the cost of what we're spending now on a lot of these other treatments and what they're getting charged for. But the most unique aspect is that we can control DNA, and we can control exactly where it goes and what it does once it gets there. This is not something that we have the flexibility of doing with viral vectors. There are a few things we can control, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong with viruses. And one of the things that we have actually added to our DNA that we don't necessarily have with viruses, that we can actually manufacture a lot of these treatments directly inside the patient, right? In terms of proteins, in terms of antibodies, in terms of nucleic acid treatments like mRNA vaccines. Right now, we're making all of those mRNA that you need for a COVID vaccine somewhere in the manufacturing facility, right? And that's been such a huge problem, and initially bottlenecked the entire vaccine industry for COVID, because we were relying on mRNA manufacturing. But imagining being able to make that mRNA directly inside your body, right? However much you want, with just using one DNA, because DNA can code for mRNA, and that mRNA can code for proteins. And so we're really going to the biological dogma where DNA does everything for you. But now we are in a point where we can actually control what that can do. And that's what we're looking to revolutionize within the industry, is making DNA the standard for delivery. And we can deliver whatever therapeutic, especially biologics, into patients and have it be manufactured inside the patient. And this would bring down the cost dramatically. It would bring down efficacy dramatically. And the safety profile would be very, very safe because your own body's making it. And so there's no side effects from other proteins or having cytotoxic effects that your body cannot control because your body is making it for you. And this is the overall platform that we have built PepVax around. But the way we have been operating for the past couple of years is we've actually been creating what we call the INTAS companies. So INTAS are our spin-out companies where we identified one good target and one good indication, and we spun those assets out as their own companies. And so we have right now companies focused on pain management using gene therapy, but using the SmartMed platform. We have another company that's focusing on breast cancer, but they're using the SmartMed platform towards a cancer vaccine approach. We have another one that's working on pancreatic cancer, but making it using miRNA. So all of these companies are pretty much within the family of SmartMed delivery system, but each one using it in a very different way. And this is how we like to function, is we like to spin these companies out. We like to get assets from other companies and other universities, and then have them use SmartMed, and then create joint ventures. This is how we've really created our company, and how we're building our company out is through these spinouts called the INTAS companies. And this makes us very capital efficient, but also regulatory efficient, because we don't, as PepVax, have to go through the FDA. Our companies do, and that also means that we don't have to go through all the clinical trials ourselves. The INTAS companies do. So each of these companies, they are pretty much independent entities with separate teams, but all of them retain the common resource of the SmartMed delivery system. And that's what makes us a very unique model in the industry, is that not only do we have a platform technology, but we have multiple companies that we've spun out or have licensed the asset out to work on specific targeted treatments.
Thank you, Mahesh. That was very interesting overview about the company. Just want to make sure that I understand right, our listeners understand right, what makes the PepVax so unique compared to existing gene and cell therapy companies that are using a viral vector as a delivery mechanism. So with a non-viral vector, DNA-based platform, you basically, A, can have a better control, right, on the delivery mechanism, and B, it's cheaper and faster to manufacture.
manufacture,
because
yes.
it's also inside of the patient body. And most importantly, you get better outcome, efficacy, and less side effects. I think that's are the most important part that we should again highlight, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So I actually also like how you described the model, the business model that PepVax is working through into companies that each of them is focused in a certain therapeutic area. So my next question would be like, can you tell us a little bit more about the current drug development pipeline? So what are the specific indications that you are at the moment focused with the Intus family companies? So, and are there like specific drug candidates in your pipeline that you are looking to out-license, or you looking for licensing partners? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, right now there are multiple different partnerships we've had, but also, are looking to out-license as well. So we have partnerships with very well-known universities, including Johns Hopkins, Stanford, and we're getting quite a few other universities onto our platform as well. And we are jointly developing assets in multiple different indications. So I mentioned 3 that we have already spun out or plan to spin out this year, with one around pain management, one around breast cancer, and one around pancreatic cancer. The other indications we have right now, candidates that we're developing using this platform, include diabetes, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, looking both at gene therapy as well as protein expression for insulin. We also are working on a current potential partnership for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy with another partner. And we also have assets looking at multiple different cancers as well. So non-small cell lung cancer, as well as right now, we've just started work around specific gene therapies for somewhat, not necessarily I would say competing with someone like Spark, but something looking at hemophilia. A different niche within hemophilia that we're looking to target with one of our partner companies. So these are where we think there's a lot of value, but certainly the platforms matter as well. I mean, right now immuno-oncology is probably still one of the hottest biotechnology fields, and so we have a lot of people working on these indications using CAR Ts or mRNA or miRNA, and all of them, as I mentioned, currently use in some capacity viral vectors to either make them or are using just plain mRNA, which an RNA is great to get into the cytoplasm, but it's very unstable. Your body does not like RNA within your bloodstream or within your cells, so it breaks it down very quickly. So you have to have a lot of RNA type approach, ribonucleics in order for it to work. And so that kind of balances out the advantages that you have with mRNA by having to have such a high dose, which increases manufacturing again. And so there are a lot of problems that other people have had, and this includes in expression of how well something expresses inside the patient. There's nothing better than DNA to express things. I mean, mRNA can express, but mRNA expresses for one protein at a time. But as we, humans, we can splice DNA, and so we can make 20, 30, 40 proteins using one strand of DNA. That's not something you can do with mRNA. Now, in terms of safety, I already mentioned it's very safe to be inside patients, so we can put as much DNA as we want, and we're not afraid that they're going to have the significant reaction, because your body's used to DNA. It has DNA, but your body's not used to viruses, right? If it hasn't seen that virus before, it wants to go attack it. And that's a limiting factor for viruses when it comes to gene therapy. All of them are one and done, right? So once you use one type of virus inside a patient, that virus can no longer be used because there's an immune reaction against that virus now. So if you have a gene therapy that's reliant on viruses, you're going to create an immune reaction against that virus. And so you can't put that same gene therapy again. So you have to create a whole new virus, a viral vector, to get the exact same gene therapy. Creates a lot of complications. But DNA, you don't have that problem. DNA is pretty much inherently non-immunogenic. And even within our plasmid, we made it even so much so that it has practically no immune reaction that even a traditional DNA might have. For instance, if I take my DNA, put it into your body, there will be an immune reaction. But we've removed all of those identifiers, as we call them, in the DNA. So your body pretty much recognizes our DNA as pretty much normal DNA. It doesn't go and attack it. So you can use our type of platform for multiple doses. And this is going to be a huge advantage for gene therapies, because it's very hard to figure out exactly how much dose you need the first time you give a treatment to a patient. We've seen this all the time. If you give Tylenol, you say, "I'm going to take 2 tablets. If it doesn't work, take 2 more." Right? But you can't do that with gene therapy. So you have to get it right the first time, and that's very hard to do. But now we can create these dose dependence with DNA that you don't have the control of when we have viruses. And so we have a lot of companies now looking at this platform for gene therapies. And unfortunately, I can't go into all the different gene therapies yet, because we do have a couple agreements in place in terms of disclosure. But we do have quite a few gene therapies that we are targeting, and we feel very confident that they will get the results that they're looking for with this repeatable dose that they haven't been able to do with viruses. And so these are all candidates that are very early stage, and we are looking for partners to either license this assets out to, so both big pharma as well as biotech companies who want to get involved in the space. We have neuro development type assets. We have oncology assets. We have immunology assets. So we have quite a few assets that we have a pipeline of. But again, the way our model works is that they're not necessarily just our pipeline. We have so many partners all working on these different projects. This enables us to have 20, 30 different candidates that we're working on at the same time that a traditional biotech cannot, because our model helps us diversify our portfolio with very minimal risk. Because a lot of the funding is coming from right now non-dilutive funding. And so we can get them through grants, we can get them through other nonprofits. And so this enables us to get the research done at a very minimum capital requirement until someone else comes to license it out, or we decide to spin it out and that company goes and raises money. And so these are the ways that we work. But one thing I do want to mention is that we also in-license assets. I think this is one of the things that we have talked about. We are always interested in finding assets that we can improve by using the SmartMate platform. So we also look for companies who are struggling to deliver their candidate using viral vector. We've actually gone in and said, you know what, we'll buy this off of you, and we'll create our own company around it using SmartMate as an in-test company. So that is also in the realm of what we can do with companies as well.
Thank you, Mahesh. That was very interesting how you explained, and that you have not only drug candidates in your pipeline that you want to build, but also looking for assets from external companies. And I think that's one of the reasons your company joined BioNeex. So I want to remind our listeners that PepVax has already listed, but they are also actively looking for interesting potential assets. So please go ahead and list, and Mahesh companies with their leadership team always looking into that. So I want to ask you about the next question. Your milestone. What's the milestone that you are trying to drive the company towards as a CEO to reach?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of milestones, our milestones that at least one of the main KPIs that we look at are company formation, and how many companies we are able to actually spin out using the multiple assets. So one is the number of assets we're working on, and the other one, the bigger one, is how many companies are spinning out. It's, while this might seem quite unreachable, but our goal is to create a new company every 3 months. So we look for great candidates that are doing really well. We are able to spin those out. So our next big milestone is we're expecting 3 companies to be spun out just this year, and we're expecting to get looking at maybe another 3 companies to 4 companies next year in terms of company formation. And we have multiple partners we've already spoken to. So these are 3 companies that we know are going to be formed this year. And then we're, right now, the pipeline, we're pulling together which next assets are showing the most promise that we could potentially spin those out as companies as well. And so, our major milestones are really our first company that we have licensed our platform out to, they're about to be in their IND filing phase. And so, we're looking for our first asset to be tested in humans, hopefully by end of this year, early next year. It got delayed because of COVID. It was actually supposed to start last year, but it was really hard to recruit patients during COVID, especially since this is it was a gene therapy, and so it had to be done in person. And many people did not want to come to the hospitals, with the risk of. So there were quite a few delays due to the pandemic. But we are hoping that now that things are opening up, we're able to get the candidates or the patients that we could recruit to actually test this candidate out. And so we're hoping in the next 6 months or so we'll have an asset that actually has some human data backed up by it as well. We're hoping that that's one major milestone that will really change our perspective in what we can do, because we have primarily tested all of these assets in early stage laboratory settings, and so we haven't had direct human data yet. But we're hoping our first licensing would get there, and we're confident that the other two companies that we are forming, two out of the three companies, will actually be able to get to IND by next year as well, because the assets we're working on are quite late. They're pretty much into the GLP tox studies and are ready for IND filing soon. So we're thinking that they can also potentially be in humans very, very quickly. And so these are milestones we're expecting in the next 6 to 12 months.
Thank you. So to clarify, the company is basically trying to spin off or create the daughter companies once there is already clear path to IND enabling studies. Is it right?
Yes. So these are pretty clear paths to IND enabling studies. Correct.
Very good. So then, can you tell us a little bit more about current funding situation? The company itself, it sounds very interesting. I mean, me as an investor now, I would be very excited to put my money. Tell us a little bit about more on that. How investors can invest in your company? Is there any the strategy that drives company perhaps also to IPO? Maybe not the PepVax itself, maybe some of the daughter companies. So tell us a little bit more from investor perspective about the business model and the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, the companies that we spin out, we do keep them quite independent. So those companies are raising money on their own. So that's, I would love those CEOs, I can introduce you to them. They can talk a little bit about their strategies. But within PepVax itself, one major thing is that we've primarily been self-funded, and we've been running, and something else that makes us unique is that due to these licensing deals, due to these agreements, we actually are a revenue generating company. And so we've primarily been sustaining ourselves with the revenue that we have generated in the past few years. And that's going to continue increasing as the milestone payments start to come in from many of our partners. That being said, I think we can always raise money to go faster, to spin out more companies, to test out more assets, to in-license more assets. And so we are in the process of starting a Series A, and we are looking for both strategic investors as well as institutional investors to come into this round to help us grow from both a Intus family of company growth and help them get off ground, but at the same time bring in more assets, get more collaborations with well-known universities that we can actually then spin out as more companies. And so we are in the middle of a Series A at $5 million. I think that will be enough based on the revenue that we're generating for us to get to where we need to get to in the next 12 months to 24 months. That's really where we're looking at. That being said, there is a potential that if we have a good partner and we have enough funding, we could certainly test out our own candidates within PepVax and even go through our own FDA process. We haven't had to do that on our own because of our existing business model, but we are certainly open to having some of our own in-house candidates that we can take into FDA in a process as well, especially as we're generating human data from our partners. We'll know exactly how well they're working inside humans, how safe they are, the efficacy, and we have a lot of ways to test it out and get to the FDA and hopefully the patients faster as well, and create a pathway for us for these non-viral vectors. And so that's kind of where we're looking at for the next 12 months is helping these companies grow out, but also potentially the right partner comes through and a good asset comes through for us, we could take them into clinical trials ourselves.
Thank you, Mahesh. And you give a quite good understanding about the current situation, how you drive as a co-founder and the CEO of PepVax itself, the established already business model. But can you a little bit tell us more about the long-term vision, how you imagine PepVax going to establish itself in the industry?
Sure, I think this particular type of business model, I don't think is necessarily new to the drug development industry, but to me, it would be quite new in the cell and gene therapy space. There are other companies like Bridge Biopharma, and they actually went, IPO at their current market cap's $9 billion. And then one of another big company is Roivant, right? And they have very similar model in that they spin out companies, they get assets, they and they make companies around them, and they went for a SPAC IPO earlier this year, and they're currently worth $7 billion. Our goal is to be similar to BridgeBio and Roivant, but for cell and gene therapies. They look at small molecules, which is more on the pharmaceutical side. We're looking at large molecules, and our goal is to be able to spin out multiple of these companies, get them very quickly into clinical trials, and raise money to help them grow and get into commercialization, and that will then raise our value as well, because when we spin these companies out, we own part of these companies, and so our value kind of goes up as these companies go and raise more money and are more successful. And so that is the vision for us, is to be lack of a better term, the Roivant or the BridgeBio for cell and gene therapies, and being able to create multiple companies around our primary asset, which is SmartMid, but looking at other good candidates that can combine with SmartMid and get the best treatment for the patients as soon as possible. That's really the big vision for PepVax, and we're hoping within the next 3 to 4 years we'll have 10 to 15 companies that we're now running as the parent company, and each one focusing on specific indications, specific targets, and succeeding in getting those candidates over to the patients as soon as possible.
Yes, that sounds, a vision that, as you mentioned, the companies, for instance, Roivant or other ones, already existing in the industry the last couple of years, and that completely disrupting the large pharma, big pharma model, right? So,
absolutely.
From early stage to develop something that can come to the patient bed faster and cheaper, that's absolutely a great model. So I really want to thank you today for this interview, Mahesh. But just before we have another 1 minute, is there anything else that you would like to tell that I didn't get a chance to ask you?
Sure. I think based on this model, not only are we looking for candidates from a drug perspective, we're also looking for candidates from people to run our companies. And so we're always looking for amazing CEOs, amazing scientific officers, operating officers. So if there are other great entrepreneurs looking at this this talk, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of learn more about you, see if you might be a good fit for some of the companies you plan to spin out. So not only will BioNeex hopefully help us with the candidate search and help us license our platform out, but also maybe potentially get us some good entrepreneurs and operators that can actually help us run our companies that we plan to spin out. But again, thank you for the opportunity. This has been really great.
Thank you, Mahesh. It was also my pleasure to having you today as a guest at BioNeex interview. I want to once again remind our audience that our guest today was the CEO and co-founder of PepVax, Mahesh Narayanan. PepVax is the parent company of the Intus family of companies revolving around its non-viral DNA-based gene delivery and enhancement platform to develop the next generation of cell and gene immunotherapies for cancers, infectious disease, and genetic diseases. So thank you, Mahesh. It was great to talking to you today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and we will come again with another BioNeex interview.